Niv-Mizzet's first appearance in Magic the Gathering was from Guild Pact, where he debuted as Niv-Mizzet the Firemind. This is the first incarnation of Niv-Mizzet, as we're going to see very soon. There are 3 others that came subsequently thereafter. After his appearance in Guild Pact, he returned to Ravnica as the Draco Genius. Then, in Guilds of Ravnica, he returned once more as Niv-Mizzet Perrin. Shortly thereafter, approximately 2 standard sets later, he came back in War of the Spark as Niv-Mizzet Reborn, a 6/6 flyer costing 1 of every color. And when he enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library, and for each color pair, choose a card that's exactly those colors from among them, put the chosen cards into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is a Niv-Mizzet Reborn EDH deck tech. So in each iteration of Niv-Mizzet through Magic's history, he's been all about the card draw. And I will preface this deck tech by saying that this card draw is not one to be abused with too many blank effects. What we're going to see here is an exact as we could make it, balance of all 10 guilds within this deck itself. So, and how we're going to demonstrate that is we cut down all 10 guilds, 6 cards per guild for a total of 60 spells and creatures to go along with Niv-Mizzet as our commander, and 39 lands. So before we get to the spells, let's talk real estate. All right, so 1 basic of each: a plains, an island, a swamp, and of course a mountain and a forest. There is not a lot of room here for non-colored mana. So colorless mana, we're going to try to leak that out because every single spell and every single creature in this deck is multicolored. Non-basic lands, we're starting off with a command tower, of course, the single greatest land in our game, a reflecting pool, Pillar of the Perrins, which is a fantastic card, especially when every single spell is multicolored, and an exotic orchard. All right, so with those 5 basics and those 4 non-basics, with those 5 basic lands and these 4 non-basics, we're going to move to the last 30 lands of our deck to create our mana base for this Niv-Mizzet deck. And the first 10, and if you've watched any of the other 5-color commander deck techs from MTG Burgeoning here, hello Burgeonites, welcome back, you know what you're about to see. We got all 10 check lands. They're all represented here. There are the allies, and then here are the enemies. Okay, so we got those 10. And after the check lands, we've got our shock lands. And similar to that, we've got the 5 allied, or similar to the check lands, we've got the 5 allied colors and the 5 enemies. All 10 guilds represented here by the 10 different shock lands. And as mana fixing will be a premium in this 5-color deck where every single spell is multicolored, to help fetch these lands out into play, we have all 10 fetches. Okay, and that's our 39 lands for our mana base of this commander deck for Niv-Mizzet Reborn. Now, let's get to the spells. Okay, so here we are with the breakdown of our guild spells. So like I said, we're going to take 6 cards from each guild, and how we broke down each of those 6 cards is we want 2 creatures, we want 2 forms of removal, we want 1 form of advantage, and we want 1 form of battlefield or army enhancement. So we're going to start with our creatures. We got 2 different kinds of creatures for this deck. We got 1 creature that we're going to consider to be our beatdown creature. This is the creature that we want in play that's going to help us whittle down our opponents. It's going to help us win the game. They are, for me, some of the best warring, battling, attacking creatures that each guild has that can be represented in this deck. And the only caveat is that they all must be legendary. Each one of the creatures must be legendary. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to start right with the Azorius Guild. And our first creature is going to be Dragon Lord Ojutai. For 3 and 1 each of Azorius colors, we're getting a 5/4 flyer, and it has hexproof if it's untapped. And when it does deal combat damage to a player, we're looking at the top 3 cards of that player's library, 1 into our hand, and the rest to the bottom of our library in any order. This is a great flyer. It's a pretty strong blocker for a 5 mana cost creature, and it gives us some card advantage. So a nice added bonus to this creature. Okay, next up is going to be the Dimir Guild. Ooh, that's kind of bad. I won't go like that. That's better. Next up is the Dimir Guild, and we're going back to Shadowmoor for this representation, and we have Una, Queen of the Fae. For 3 and any combination of 3 Dimir hybrid mana, we're getting a 5/5 flying fairy wizard. And we're going to tap X, and blue or black, we're going to choose a color, and target opponent removes the top X cards of his or her library from the game. And for each card of the chosen color, we are going to get a Dimir Fairy Rogue creature token with flying. Again, big body flyer gives us additional advantage. You're going to see this as a massive trend for our beatdown creatures, is we're looking for evasion. We're looking for big bombs that can seriously help us out. Not just with attacking, but in other ways too. That brings us to the Rakdos Guild. And for Rakdos, we're going straight to the Dragons of Tarkir, Dragon Lord Kolaghan. Now, yes, the bottom text of this card has no pertinent relevance in Commander. However, for 4 and 1 each of Rakdos colors to get a 6/5 flying haster that gives other creatures we control haste, well, I'll take that every day of the week and twice on Friday Night Magic. All right. Next up is the Gruul Guild, and we're going to stay on the plane of Tarkir as we talk about Dragon Lord Atarka. For 5 and 1 each of Gruul colors, we're getting an 8/8 flying trampler that when it ETBs, it's going to deal 5 damage as divided as we choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers at our opponent's control. An 8/8 flying trampler for 7 that comes into play and has a bit limited of a Bogardan Hellkite ability. We will take that. 8/8 flying trample. All right, next up, Selesnya Guild. And we are going to Avacyn Restored. Sigarda, the Host of Herons. For 2, a green and 2 white, we're getting a 5/5 flying hexproof that will not permit our opponents to cast any spells that target us to sacrifice any of our permanents. Fantastic creature. The flying, the hexproof, evasion, protection. That's our Selesnyan representative. Okay, so with the 5 allied colored guilds out of the way, now we're moving to our enemy colors. And there was a bit of a struggle with the Orzhov Guild. There are the majority of the legendary Orzhov creatures are very build a deck around me and there aren't as many as I would have liked to do the things that I want this creature level to do in this deck. So we went with, unfortunately, the overcosted but still pretty powerful Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts. For 5, a white and a black, we're getting a 4/4 vigilance and protection from creatures. And then when a creature deals combat damage to us, we're going to destroy that creature, and they are going to get a 1/1. No, I'm sorry. We are going to get a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. The 7 casting cost is high, I get that, but if she can get into play, she can really have a massive effect. She can be a blocker for days and a deterrent for attacking us. Teysa, she is our Orzhov representative. Next up, Boros. Attack, attack, and then attack some more. And if we're talking about attacking, and we're talking about attacking more than once, well, then we're going to talk about the War Leader, Aurelia, the War Leader. For 2 red and 2 white, we're getting a 3/4 hasty, flying, vigilant legendary angel that when she attacks for the first time each turn, we are going to untap all creatures we control, and then after that phase, there is going to be an additional combat phase. Aurelia is a beater. We get her down there with a couple of our other biggins, and if we are unanswered, we are going to really start causing some problems in that game. All right, next up, we're at the Izzet Guild. And for Izzet, we're going to go with the Locust God. We're going to get a legendary god creature for 4 and 1 color each of Izzet mana for a 4/4 flyer that whenever we draw a card, we're creating a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying. Also gives us the ability to tap 2, a blue and a red, to draw a card and discard a card. And if for some reason the Locust God dies, it goes right back to our hand. This guy is bonkers, and he is absolutely making the top 10 of this deck tech. All right, 2 guilds left. Second to last is the Simic Guild. The legendary restriction on this tier of creatures for this deck definitely limited the options. I mean, if we were talking about a flying, trampling, beating down creature, the Simic Sky Swallower would have been there, or the Hydroid Krasis would have been there, but the legendary restriction kind of precluded them from entering into this conversation. So with that in mind, we went with the Prime Speaker Zegana. For 2 green and 2 blue, we're getting a legendary Merfolk Wizard, and when she enters the battlefield, she's going to get X +1/+1 counters on her, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control, and when she enters the battlefield, draw cards equal to her power. Minimally, we'll get 2 cards off of Zegana. Oh, actually, no, we won't. We'll get 1 card because it's among other creatures. So hopefully we have one of our biggins out here that when she hits, we're drawing a nice batch of cards. All right, last big beatdown creature of this tier, and it comes from Golgari. And a bit of a surprise for me when I was reviewing these creatures is this one just seems like it would do more for us than any of the others, and that's Storev, the Devkaran Lich. For 1, 2 black and a green, we're getting a 5/5 trampling body. And if it deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, we are returning to our hand a creature or planeswalker card from our graveyard that wasn't put there this combat. That is lasting power, and that's why Storev is in this deck. So if we look, aside from Zegana, we have evasion across the board. We have advantages too, with card draw, with damage, with hasting, with tokens, multiple tokens. These are the creatures we're going to lean on to help us push through victory in this game. Those are the first 10. Again, there are going to be an additional 10. These next 10 creatures, however, these are not going to be necessarily our beatdown creatures, which is not to say that they won't do damage in and of themselves, but these are going to be more of our auxiliary creatures. These are the creatures that are going to help set up the battlefield for us. They're going to help enhance what we've got going on out there, and in some cases, they may be enough themselves to push us through for victory. All right, and we're going to go straight through the guilds just like we did last time. We've got 10 auxiliary creatures. Again, the restriction is they all must be legendary. 10 legendary auxiliary creatures for me, and in this deck, one from each guild that I think would be the best combination for what we're trying to do. Azorius is the first guild, and with that, we've got Wrath Capuchin, the ship's mage. For 2, a white and a blue, we're getting a 3/3 flasher with flying. And whenever we cast a historic spell, we may cast a historic spell as though it had flash. So our artifacts, which we'll get to that, our legendaries, which as we can see, we already have quite a number of legendaries, which is one of the stipulations of why we went out so many legendary creatures in this deck, and the saga. So a 3/3 flash flyer that lets us cast our historic spells with flash. That's Wrath. Okay, next up is our Dimir Guild. And for that, we're bringing Lazoff, the Multifarious. For just a blue and a black, we get a 1/3 legendary shapeshifter that when he ETBs, we surveil 1. And then we can tap X, and then he can become a copy of a target creature card in our graveyard with a converted mana cost X. His name is still Lazoff. He's still legendary, and he gains this ability. This seemed like a no-brainer for a nice utility creature, a nice auxiliary creature from the Dimir Guild. And that is for Dimir. Rakdos is up next. And we're going with Olivia Valderin. For 2, a black and a red, we're getting a 3/3 flyer that can ping another creature for 1 and a red. That creature then becomes a vampire in addition to its other types, and then Olivia gets a little bit bigger. We can tap 3 and 2 black to gain control of target vampire for as long as we control Olivia Valderin. So again, we've got the flying, we got some evasion, and we got some pinging ability. Olivia Valderin is definitely going to be part of this Niv-Mizzet commander deck. Next up is the Gruul Guild, and that's going to be all day long, that's going to be Xenagos, God of Revels. 3, a red and a green, we're getting a 6/5 legendary enchantment creature god that's indestructible. If our devotion to green is 7 or less than 7, he is not a creature. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, another one of our creatures that we control gains haste and +X/+X till end of turn, where X is that creature's power. If we have the benefit of pairing Xenagos with any of our biggins up here from tier 1 of our creatures, I think we're going to have good things happen in that game. Last allied colored auxiliary creature for us today, and this is going to be from the Selesnya Guild, and it's going to be one of the reasons why we stick to such a staunch restriction of only legendary creatures, and that's going to be Captain Sisay. For 2 and 1 color each of Selesnya, we're going to get a 2/2 legend that we can tap and search our library for a legend or legendary card, reveal it, and put it into our hand. Okay, Captain Sisay. Next up, we return to the Orzhov Guild, and we decided to go with Kambal, the Console of Allocation. For 1, a white and a black, we're getting a 2/3 Human Advisor, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player is going to lose 2 life, and we're going to gain 2 life. Hopefully we can get him out earlier in the game, so that we can start to drain our opponents and boost our own life total. Next up is the Boros Guild, and if we have Aurelia in the deck, you know that the other one isn't far behind, and there she is, the Blade of Gold Knight. Gisela's going to be one of our enhancers, of course. She's definitely an auxiliary creature. She could have definitely been a beatdown too. And Gisela's coming in. She's coming in at first strike and flying at a 5/5 body, 4 red and 2 white. And if a source would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, that source deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. And that also means that two opponents could do that to each other and have it doubled. And if a source would deal damage to us or a permanent we control, we're preventing half of that. Round it up. Gisela is absolutely a beast, and if you've ever played with her in a multiplayer game, you know exactly why. All right, 3 guilds left, and we're back to the Izzet Guild. And our helper creature in this guild, tier 2 of our creatures for this deck, is going to be Jorah, the Weatherlight Captain. For 2 and 1 each of Izzet colors, we're getting a 3/3 human artificer that whenever we cast a historic spell, we're drawing a card. Legendaries, artifacts, sagas are historic. Again, that's one of the reasons why we have so many legendaries in this deck. Get Jorah out there. Let's draw some cards. Okay, 2 guilds left. Down to Simic. And our Simic representation for this tier is going to be Rashmi, our Eternity's Crafter. For 2 and 1 color each of Simic, we are getting a 2/3 Elf Druid, and whenever we cast our first spell each turn, we're revealing the top card of our library. If it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less, we're going to cast it without paying its mana cost, and if we don't, we put it into our hand. Card draw, card advantage. Okay, and last, we come back down to the Golgari Guild. And the last of our 20 creatures is going to be Ikra Shadiki, the Usurper. This is a 3/7 Naga Wizard for 3, a black and a green. It has Menace, and whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we're going to gain life equal to that creature's toughness. This is one of the ways in which we can gain some life in this deck. Okay. And that is our stock of creatures. That's our 20, including Niv. There are our first 21 creatures of the deck, all legendary. Now that we've gotten the creatures out of the way, now we're going to move to our disruption. All right, so now let's talk removal. So it's okay for us to show our big, flashy, flying around the battlefield, causing all kinds of havoc creature, but we're definitely going to need some disruption. And disruption can be anything from targeted removal to mass removal to getting rid of problem permanents. We're going to go through, and each guild is going to have 2 forms of disruption. So it's going to be 20 total pieces of disruption. And we're going to start with the Azorius Guild, and we're going to start with Teferi the Time Raveler. Okay. This is one of the most powerful planeswalkers there is, and he's only rare. I mean, he's a rare planeswalker. Just his static ability alone is denying opponents to the ability to cast any instance. That's just remarkable. Plus, he can bounce by returning an artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand and then draw a card. And it doesn't have to be one of their artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. It can be one of ours. And then his +1 ability to plus them up, we can cast sorceries as though they had flash. So Teferi is our first piece of disruption, and first from the Azorius Guild. All right, next up is Azorius piece number 2. And no, it's not Supreme Verdict. It's going to be Time Wipe. For 2 white and a blue, we're going to return a creature we control to our hand, and then we're going to destroy all creatures. If we happen to have Niv on the battlefield at the time we cast Time Wipe, we get Niv returned to our hand, which will allow us to cast him for his original mana cost, netting us some additional value by playing him from our hand as opposed to from the command zone. Plus, if we have any of our other creatures that are in play, we can bring one of those back and not have to worry about losing everything. I prefer this to Supreme Verdict in this type of build. Again, it's very meta dependent. If you're playing with a lot of counter spells, and if you're playing against a lot of counter spells, then yeah, you probably want to include Supreme Verdict, but I prefer Time Wipe here. Okay, that is the Azorius Guild. Next up, we're going to go with Dimir and some targeted disruption, starting with Tyrant Scorn. For just 1 blue and 1 black, we're going to pick one. We're going to destroy a creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, or we're going to return a creature to its owner's hand. Pretty simple, pretty cut and dry. Thank you, War of the Spark. Dimir number 2, Recoil. We're going to return any permanent to its owner's hand. Again, that could target I can target our permanents. That player then discards a card. Any permanent. All right, there's 4 forms of removal. 4 forms of disruption. Now we're going to move to the Rakdos Guild. And what better way to start with the Rakdos Guild than to start with the Rakdos Charm? A black and a red as an instant, and we're choosing one. We're either exiling at someone's graveyard, or we're destroying an artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Goblin decks, Sliver decks, Elf decks, Token decks. This card is a great card. And lastly from Rakdos, very simple. Terminate, destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. No restrictions, nothing about being non-black, nothing about it being legendary or non-legendary. Just a straight, if it's a creature, we can kill it. All right, next up we are Rakdos. Rakdos Disruption. Piece number 1, Hull Breach. For a red and a green, we're choosing one. We're going to destroy an artifact, we're going to destroy an enchantment, or we're going to destroy an artifact and an enchantment. All that for just 1 red and 1 green. So let's slightly double that mana cost and decimate someone. For 2, a red and a green, we're destroying an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land. 4 for 1, if it resolves, oh, that feels good. If you've done it, you know how nice that feels. Okay, that brings us to Selesnya. And piece of disruption number 1 from the Selesnya Guild is going to be Sylvan Reclamation. For 3, a green and a white at instant speed, we can exile 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. Plus, we also have the ability to basic land cycle if we're having some trouble with our mana. Sylvan Reclamation is piece number 1 from the Selesnya Guild. And lastly, from Selesnya, we have Aura Shards. All the way back from Invasion, for 1, a green and a white, whenever a creature comes into play under our control, we may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Okay, and those are our 5 allied guilds, so we're halfway through our disruption. 10 down, 10 to go. We're at Orzhov, piece number 1, with the single greatest flavor text in the history of Magic for me, in my opinion. But that's because I was such a huge fan of the set, and if you're a fan of the channel, if you're one of these Burgeonites out there, you know the plane, and you probably already know the card. Anguished Unmaking. 1 white and a black, exile target permanent, take 3 life. A cruelty beyond imagining, a pain beyond description. It fell upon him to end Abyssin forever. Just awesome. Anguished Unmaking, Orzhov Guild. Next up is Merciless Eviction. 4, a white and a black for this sorcery. We're picking one. A lot of things are going to get exiled. They're either going to be artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers. But whatever you pick, they're all gone. All right, so we're up to Boros. Boros Disruption. Boros Charm. This is probably more going to help us by keeping our permanents indestructible, disrupting any potential removal from our opponents. The 4 damage to target player sometimes comes in handy, and the target creature gaining double strike Let's not sleep on that. You've seen the biggins that we have flying around the skies of this battlefield. So if you pair one of those biggins in the air with, let's say, Xenagos, we're looking at quite a lethal. We could one-off someone. I mean, you think about it, if you get the Dragon Lord Atarka out there, and Xenagos hits him for the +8/+8, there's 16. Let's double strike him to 32. That could end someone's day. So, Boros Charm. And disruption number 2, and a tricky one, maybe unexpected as well, is Master Warcraft. For 2 and any 2 combination of Boros colors, it's an instant that we cast only before attackers are declared. We pick which creatures attack, and then we choose how creatures block this turn. How'd you like to be sitting across a table and telling someone, yeah, you're not going to block with any of these creatures this turn? Yeah, that's disruption right there. Master Warcraft. More of a combat trick, but we can play it on our opponents as well. Okay, that brings us to the Izzet Guild. Disruption for Izzet. It's going to be an either or. It's going to be either an advantage for us or a disruption for them, particularly with the first selection. And that's going to be Invoke the Firemind. For X 2 blue and a red, we're going to draw X cards, or we're going to deal X damage to a target. Okay, and the target could be a player, could be a creature, planeswalker. Invoke the Firemind. And our next piece has some similarities to Invoke the Firemind, but is a bit more versatile, of course. And that's going to be Expansion Explosion. For the expansion part, we're going to copy target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. We may choose new targets for that copy. And if we're talking about just our instants and sorceries, how about if we copied a Decimate? Yeah, you see that, right? That would be pretty sweet. And the explosion portion of this card, X 2 blue and 2 red, this deals X damage to any target, and then target player gains X cards. So the explosion part of this card is both options of Invoke the Firemind. Okay, and that's the Izzet Guild. Next up, we have Simic. And disruption number 1 from Simic is going to be our Simic Charm. A green and a blue. One creature is going to get +3/+3 till end of turn. Come on, camera, get in the game. There we go. Or permanents we control gain hexproof until end of turn, or we're bouncing a creature. Again, it's any creature, so it could be one of ours, it could be one of our opponents. That's disruption from Simic. Alright, folks, this one's going to hurt a little bit. If you're a fan of the channel, you know how I feel. I like to play Magic. I like to cast my spells. I like to be able to do what my deck is supposed to do. I mean, removal is fine. I get it's part of the game. But if you can't cast a spell, then you're not playing Magic. So this one pains. This one pains me to put out there. But after going through all the options, it's clearly the best one available for what we're trying to do here. And disruption piece number 2 from the Simic Guild, it's going to be Plasm Capture. It's a counterspell, and it's the only one in the deck, and it pains me to even include that in the 99, because I am not a counterspeller. So Plasm Captures 2 green and 2 blue, and we counter a target spell. And at the beginning of our next pre-combat main phase, we're going to add X mana in any combination of colors to our mana pool, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. And that was the draw. Having that mana, all of that colored mana, added to our mana pool to cast any combination of our gold cards, it was just too enticing, and I bend my rules to put this card in this deck, because I am not a counterspeller. Plasm Capture's in. Alright, 2 cards left from one guild, the Golgari Guild. Can you guess which 2? It's probably pretty easy if you really think about it. How about a targeted removal piece with Assassin's Trophy? A black and a green, we're going to destroy any permanent an opponent controls. That opponent can replace that with a basic land. That's fine with me. I mean, this is Commander. I mean, one basic land is not going to make too much of a difference if you're trying to remove some kind of horrific permanent. All right, this is it. Disruption / removal spell number 20. Pernicious Deed. 1, a black and a green for an enchantment that we can tap X, sack this, and we destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. That is Pernicious Deed. Okay, so there we go. We've got our 1 commander. We've got our 39 lands, 20 creatures, 10 biggins, 10 auxiliary creatures, and then 20 forms of disruption. There's only 20 cards left. So let's move next with our quote-unquote advantage tier. Okay, so for this tier of cards, 1 spell per guild, we are looking to gain some kind of an advantage, whether it's through life or card draw or recursion or mana. We're looking to get some kind of advantage over our opponent, something to help speed up what we're trying to do in this deck. 1 spell per guild, and we're going to go right in turn order just like we have been. For Azorius, I really couldn't come up with anything better than Sphinx's Revelation. An X, a white, and 2 blue. At instant speed, of course, we're gaining X life, we're drawing X cards. End step casting this, it's just a beautiful thing, and I really couldn't think of any better spell than the Sphinx's Revelation for Azorius. Okay, that brings us to the Dimir Guild. What kind of advantage can we get from running into the Dimir colors? Well, we're going to go old school with this card, and we're going to go Lim-Dûl's Vault. For a blue and a black, at instant speed, of course, we're going to look at the top 5 cards of our library. And as many times as we choose, we may pay 1 life to put those cards on the bottom of our library, and then look at the next top 5. Eventually, we're going to find 5 that we like, hopefully, without burning through too much of our life. And then eventually, we're going to shuffle all but the top 5 cards of that library. We're going to all but the top 5 cards of the library, and then we're going to put those top 5 on the top of our library in any order. And what this could do is this could help set up a nice card draw off of Niv. We can kind of go through and filter out and see in increments of 5 cards, are we going to get any lands? I mean, if we're looking at 5 cards and 3 of them are lands, we definitely don't want to cast Niv into that because we want to draw as many cards as possible. So this is our form of advantage. It kind of helps set up our library. Lim-Dûl's Vault. Okay. Rakdos Advantage. Theater of Horrors. 1, a black and a red. It's an enchantment, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we can exile the top card of our library. During our turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, we may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. And 3 in a red, it deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So this kind of helps us build up an extra draw step during our turns. They get exiled. There's the slight limitation of casting them only if an opponent lost life this turn. But, well, it's giving us an advantage, so we're going to roll with it. Theater of Horrors for Rakdos. Next up, Gruul. What kind of Gruul advantage are we going to get? Well, what if I said to you we're going to get some form of card recursion? Modern Horizons says, let's reap the past. For X, a red and a green, we're going to return X cards at random from our graveyard to our hand. I'm on board with that. Card advantage. Selesnya. This one should be a pretty easy one. Mirari's Wake. 3, a green and a white. Creatures we control get +1/+1. And whenever we tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to our mana pool of any type that land produced. Doubles our mana, strengthens our creature. All around great card. A great card for our deck. Okay. 5 guilds left. And we're back to the Orzhov Guild. And here we are going to go all in with Kaya, the Ghost Assassin. 2, a white and a black. She enters with a healthy 5 loyalty counters. We can 0 her to exile her or another target creature, potentially Niv. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of our next upkeep, and we lose 2 life. So we can target one of our opponents, we can target one of our own, we could send our commander back to our hand, cast him again, and try to draw some more cards. We can -1 her to have a drain effect of each opponent losing 2 life and we gain 2 life. Or we can -2 her and have each opponent discard a card and we draw a card. So she gives us advantages all over the place, and Kaya is number 1 in the Orzhov slot. Next up is Boros, and we're going to stay on the path of the Planeswalker, and we're going to show up some Nahiri the Harbinger. Yep, see, I just can't quit Shadows over Innistrad, baby. Can't do it, won't do it, not gonna do it. For 2 a red and a white, she comes into play with 4 loyalty counters. We can +2 her, and we may discard a card. If we do, we draw a card. -2, we're exiling an enchantment, a tapped artifact, or a tapped creature. And the -8, her big bang, if we ever get to that, we're searching our library for an artifact or creature, and trust me, in this deck, you're going to be looking most likely for a creature. We're going to put it onto the battlefield, shuffle our library, it gains haste, and then bounce it back to our hand at the beginning of the end step. Nahiri does a lot, and she's going to do a lot for us in this deck. All right, we're at the Izzet Guild, and we're still talking about what kind of advantages cards can give us. So, with that in mind, Karanos, the God of Storms, 3 and 1 color each of Izzet. We're going to get a 6/5 indestructible enchantment creature. And of course, as long as our Izzet devotion is less than 7, this will stay as an enchantment. We will reveal the first card we draw on each of our turns, and if we reveal a land card this way, we're going to draw a card. So it's like we're going to get an additional draw. If we reveal a non-land card, this is going to lightning bolt anything. So card draw, potential removal. Izzet Karanos, a definite. Simic Guild, legendary creature, Tatyova, the Benthic Druid. We had to include her. She's just too good. 3 and 1 each of Simic colors, and whenever a land enters the battlefield in our control, we're drawing a card and we're gaining a life. There's just nothing, I couldn't find anything else that I wanted to put in there other than Tatyova. All right, last card advantage comes from the Golgari Guild, and that's going to be Treasured Find. I don't know why this card is not more highly played or highly publicized, but for a black and a green, return any card from your graveyard to your hand and then exile Treasured Find. Granted, Regrowth kind of does the exact same thing with a colorless and a green, and it doesn't get exiled, but for the purposes of this deck being all 2 colors aside from our commander, Treasured Find is a find. All right, so that's it. Those are our 10 pieces of, we'll say advantage, our 10 card advantages, 1 from each guild, which leaves us with only 10 cards left, and those are each going to be our either battlefield or army, some kind of enhancers. We're looking for some cards that are going to help us advance our forces, help us to advance our battlefield, things that we can use to make our creatures and our permanents better. 1 from each guild. So we got 10. And the first one, they're all going to be pretty similar for the first 5 guilds, and you're going to see why in a moment. Shield of Righteousness. Yeah, it's an artifact, it's an equipment, but it's still within the scope of our guild color parameters. A white and a blue, equipped creature is going to get +0/+2 in Vigilance. And if this creature blocks a creature, that creature is not going to attack during its controller's next untap step. Vigilance is an awesome mechanic, and we're going to have it on that artifact, on that equipment. You'll notice the trend here real quick with these first 5 guilds. Dimir, the Mask of Riddles. Another equipment. Equipped creature has Fear, which means it can only be blocked by black and artifact creatures. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we're drawing a card. Card advantage, enhancement. Rakdos, Demon Spine Whip. A black and a red, equipping for 1. We're going to tap X. Equipped creature gets +X until end of turn. So what if we put one of these Demon Spine Whips on one of our biggins over here, one of our flying behemoths, and then it hits Xenagos? Oh, that's just going to be lights out. Gruul. Look at this, the Mage Slayer. 1, a red and a green to equip 3. Whenever equipped creature attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to defending player. You've seen the biggins that were already flying around here. The Mage Slayer is an absolute definite. Last for the allied colored guilds, the Behemoth Sledge. 1 green and a white. We're getting +2/+2 lifelink and trample after equipping 3. Fantastic, fantastic equipment. Now, originally when I sat down to make this deck, I had non-colored equipment in this deck. And I can't tell you how much it pained to not be able to draw those whenever I would cast Niv. I want to be able to draw the maximum cards I can, and by putting these 5 pieces of equipment in here and taking out the other ones, it allowed me to do that. All right, 5 cards left. How are we going to enhance our battlefield with the Orzhov Guild? Well, remember earlier in the video when we were talking about how important it was for us to stay within the parameters of the legendary creature restriction? Well, here's one of the reasons why. Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. For 5 white and a black, we're going to return all legendary permanent cards from our graveyard to the battlefield. And it being a legendary sorcery, of course, we have to make sure that we have a legendary creature or planeswalker in play. We've got lots of those, folks. Boros. Now let's see. We have Aurelia. We have Gisela. We're attacking. We're going to war. How do you show up to a party like that and you don't invite the God of Victory? 2 red and a white. 7/4 indestructible body that has devotion that it's less than 7. It remains a creature. Creatures we control have menace and prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures we control. He's an auto include in my book. He's going to help our creatures out. Now here is an outside the box addition to this deck. From the Izzet Guild, Joyra. 1 and 1 each of Izzet colors. We're getting a 2/2 human wizard. We're tapping 2, and we're going to exile a card from our hand. We're going to put 4 time counters on it, and it gains suspend. If we got her into play early, and we had a handful of biggins, and we're able to suspend them, sure, the opponents will have a few turns to prepare and wait for them to come into play. But if the answers aren't plentiful, she can really run the day. 2 cards left. We're at the Simic Guild here, and the next card is going to be Nissa, Steward of Elements. Nissa for X and 1 color each of Simic. We're getting X loyalty counters. She's going to +2 to scry 2, which is a great mechanic in and of itself. We're going to 0 her to look at the top card of our library. And if it's a land or creature with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of loyalty counters on Nissa, we're going to put it right onto the battlefield. Yeah, that's pretty sweet too. Right into play. -6. We're going to untap 2 target lands we control, and they're 5. Whoa. That was a little weird. Okay, so what ended up happening is post-production came to find out that the video cut out the last couple minutes of the original recording, and thankfully it was just for the last 2 cards of the video. Unfortunately, there's no chance I'm going to be able to spend much time to match up how the cards were exactly displayed onto the card pool table here, so we're just going to go right back. It was a glitch. Didn't realize it at the time when I was recording, so that's why there's a little choppiness, jankiness at around the 46 minute 47 mark, somewhere around there. So let's go back to Nissa. Nissa is our Simic form of enhancement, and she comes into play with X loyalty counters and a green and a blue, and to +2 we scry 2. And to 0 her, we look at the top card of our library, and if it's a land card or a creature card with converted mana costs less than or equal to the number of loyalty counters on Nissa, we're putting that onto the battlefield. And if we have at least 6 loyalty counters on Nissa, we can also untap 2 lands that we control. They become 5/5 elemental creatures with flying and haste until the end of turn, and they're still lands. So with the removing of 6 loyalty counters, Nissa gives us 2 5/5 hasty bodies in the air. That is battlefield enhancement. That is Simic's contribution for our enhancement category of this Niv-Mizzet EDH commander deck. And here it is, card number 100, coming straight from Golgari. It is Black-Green's best contribution to our enhancement battlefield, and that is going to be Journey to Eternity. For 1 and 1 each of Golgari colors, we enchant a creature we control with this legendary enchantment. And when an enchanted creature dies, we return it to the battlefield under our control, and then we transform Journey to Eternity. And once we transform Journey into Eternity, it comes into play as a legendary land, Otzel, Cave of Eternity. We tap for 1 mana of any color, and we tap 3, a black and a green, and tap this to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is our Golgari form of enhancement. Graveyard recursion for any number of our legendary creatures, any of our biggins, any of our auxiliary creatures. That is card 100 of this Niv-Mizzet Reborn Niv-Mizzet EDH commander deck. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for sticking by this deck tech. Look for additional videos coming out of a play testing of this deck, in addition to some pretty fascinating mechanics that I was able to discover when I was doing some experimenting with Niv-Mizzet Reborn and this particular commander deck. Again, we got 60 cards, 10 guilds, 6 cards per guild, 39 lands, and 1 legendary dragon avatar.